Hey, and welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. I'm Finlos. Today is May 12th, 2025, and I'm really thankful for you to be here with me today, putting in the work. The space is where I try to make sense of the complex world around us and the equally complex landscape within us, often finding some clarity through the steady effort of exercise. Or at least that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. And today I'm going to be talking about power and how it's been concentrated, how it's distributed, how we experience its presence or its absence in our lives, and what's on my mind as I focus this effort. I've been really thinking about power. I've been talking a lot about some political stuff lately, and I know it's not the most exciting thing for everybody, but I do try to find ways to connect it to larger issues, global issues, as well as internal issues that we all experience. But as I read the news, as I do, I've been really interested by and have kind of done some digging on the power of the US presidency and a key tool presidents use, which is the executive order. And there's a lot of people talking about this right now. So I'm acknowledging that this is not new. There's a lot of people doing a lot of reporting on not just President Trump's usage of executive orders, but prior presidents as well. So it's a concept that we're hearing about a lot, but I kind of want to talk about its mechanics, its implications, and why it feels especially important right now. So to begin, what is an executive order? Generally, it's a formal written directive from the President of the United States to the federal government, which is in itself a vast network of agencies and departments and the people who work within them. And these executive orders are essentially the president issuing instructions on how the executive branch should operate or how to carry out existing laws passed by Congress. And the basis for this authority of the president isn't explicitly defined or detailed in a single line of the Constitution, but it's generally understood to stem from Article 2, which vests executive power in the president and requires them to, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, end quote. Congress can also, through legislation, grant discretionary powers to the executive branch, and executive orders can provide guidance on how those powers are used. When issued within the confines of the Constitution and existing federal law, these orders carry the force of law, binding the executive branch. They are official acts of the presidency, documented and published. And while not the sole indicator of presidential power, just the number of executive orders issued can give us some insight into their usage over time. So let's look at some recent presidencies. President Bill Clinton from 1993 to 2001 issued 364 executive orders over 2 terms, or about 45 per year. President George W. Bush from 2001 to 2009 issued 291 executive orders over his 2 terms, or an average about 36 per year. Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017 issued 276 executive orders over 2 terms, averaging about 35 per year. Donald Trump, in his first term, from 2017 to 2021, issued 220 executive orders in his single term, with an annual average of 55 per year. Joe Biden, in his single term from 2021 through 2025, issued 162 executive orders, averaging about 40 per year. As of today, in his second term, President Trump has issued 150 executive orders just in this one term. Literally, the first 3 months, the first 100 days or so of his second presidency. These numbers show a lot of variability. The frequency can be influenced by many factors: political dynamics between the president and Congress, national crises requiring swift action, or simply a president's preference for executive action versus legislative negotiation. And while raw numbers don't tell the whole story, they are a part of the picture of how presidents choose to wield their authority. The concern really arises when executive orders are used not just for administrative guidance, but as a primary tool for enacting significant, potentially controversial policy changes that some argue bypass the proper legislative process. Executive orders allow for unilateral action, which can be efficient, but also concentrates power. And it's that concentration of power that I'm gonna kind of lean into. If a president uses executive orders aggressively to direct government functions, push legal boundaries, or assert control over areas traditionally outside direct presidential command, it can lead to an expansion of executive power. And this becomes particularly salient when considered alongside the legal principle of presidential immunity. The idea that a president needs some protection from legal action for their official acts to function effectively. And recent Supreme Court considerations have delved into the scope of this immunity, particularly concerning potential criminal liability for actions taken while in office. It seems like if we look to past presidents, in particular Richard Nixon, that when public shame or the obvious, clear, indisputable evidence of unethical behavior comes to light, right, common norms and decency in that case pushed the president to resign, implicitly acknowledging the wrongdoing or the fact that he had somehow tarnished the office of the president. The concern of many legal and political analysts right now is this: if a president is inclined to use executive orders expansively to direct government and policy, and the president is shielded by broad legal immunity for their official acts being very subjective, is anything the president does while he's in office or while they are in office an official act? That combination could significantly weaken the checks and balances designed to constrain executive power. And when that power is concentrated in an individual who feels no social pressure, no need for societal norm to regulate how behaviors are perceived, this becomes a very potent combination. Critics argue that a president who feels less legally vulnerable for actions taken while in office might be more willing to use executive orders to assert control in ways that challenge established norms, potentially eroding the independence of government institutions or concentrating power in a manner seen as a threat to democratic accountability and a potential step towards authoritarianism. This is a subject of intense debate and legal challenge. reflecting fundamental questions about the limits of presidential authority in our system. And I do want to take a minute to talk about language and that word authoritarian or authoritarianism. I think just like any sense, like we go nose blind or we become deaf to certain sounds if they get repeated enough. The real meaning of that word, the authoritarianism or the authoritarian bent of this president, seems to have lost some of its impact or its power. Part of that, I think, is because the prior candidate who ran against him, Kamala Harris, used that language to describe him. And in losing, the word was rebuked to a certain extent. But words have actual meaning, and there are no better terms to describe the behaviors of this movement towards the concentration of power. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about that. I do find it interesting how relatively small the perceptible resistance has been to these fairly galling and outrageous moves by President Trump, whether it's the flurry of executive orders or the use of the Doge to cut government agencies and funding and fire people, or tariffs, or accepting $400 million jets from Qatar. I mean, there's so much going on that it seems that the system is not capable of keeping up. It's the risk of the type of government that we have, where we allow people to make decisions for us, but once we have put them in power, what do we do? And that really gets me thinking. This discussion about power and the directives flowing from the top makes me think about how power and authority are delegated throughout our society, and some perhaps uncomfortable truths about how we handle accountability and credit with this dynamic. Our entire system of government is built on this concept of delegation, of ceding power, to give up power. We live in a representative democracy where we delegate our individual authority to elected officials who, using air quotes, act on our behalf. Really, we vote for people who we think like we do, and then they go off someplace and make laws. We choose representatives to make laws, execute policies, and govern because it's impractical for every citizen to be directly involved in every decision. Or is it? I don't know. That's debatable. But this act of delegation, of ceding our individual power, fundamentally relies on trust. We place our trust in those we elect, hoping they possess the competence to make sound decisions, and crucially, that they have our best interest and the best interest of the country, whatever that means, at heart. Delegation in politics and life is often born out of necessity. Tasks are too large or too complex for one person a lot of the time. We need to leverage diverse skills and expertise. But beyond necessity, delegation is also a matter of convenience. It allows us to offload tasks as we manage our own workload. It allows us to focus on other things. This applies whether we're talking about a president delegating tasks to an agency head, a manager assigning projects to a team member, or simply asking a friend to plan an event for us. But here's where this common human tendency creates a paradox. When we delegate authority, or when we cede responsibility, when we give up those things, when we allow others to take our agency, There's often a disconnect in how accountability is handled. If the delegated task or project fails, it can be surprisingly easy to point to the person or group to whom it was delegated and say, they were the ones who are responsible. It's not my fault. And so delegation can intentionally or unintentionally create a layer of insulation from negative outcomes. We see this in bad managers a lot. We see this in weak leaders. But of course, the flip side is that when the delegated task or project succeeds, the person who delegated or led the initiative often receives significant credit or praise. The success is attributed upwards. The manager is praised for the team's success, the executive for the division's profits, the president for a policy's positive outcome. Even if the detailed work and successful execution were carried out by others down the chain. This creates a dynamic where accountability for failure is often pushed downwards, while credit for success is pulled upwards. And it's important to distinguish between delegation as a necessary act of empowering others and delegation used primarily as a means to avoid responsibility. Effective leaders delegate not just tasks, but also empower others to make decisions and take ownership. They understand that while they delegate authority, ultimate accountability for the outcome still rests with them. True leadership involves enabling others to succeed and being willing to stand accountable when things go wrong. The accountability paradox is the observable human tendency that often falls short of this ideal. In a representative system like the one we live in, good leadership is fundamentally about navigating this dynamic responsibly and earning the trust placed in them by the electorate. Good leaders understand that their power is delegated and temporary. It really begs the question, why aren't there more term limits? Good leaders view their role as stewards of the power entrusted to them, aiming to use it effectively and in a manner that justifies that trust. Some qualities that we might ascribe to good leaders include honesty and integrity, competence, transparency, accountability, empathy and respect. And of course, these are just the qualities that we want everybody to have, not just leaders. If we all possess these qualities and live by them, delegation and the interaction of responsibility and accountability would be natural and fair, a part of the process of how we learn to work together. Unfortunately, oftentimes systems are designed to benefit those who don't express these qualities. It brings me to the challenging reality. Despite the importance of trust and the clear qualities of good leadership, people are sometimes willing to delegate their authority, to vote for, to support leaders, even when there are signs or arguments suggesting these individuals may not have the best intentions for everyone. Or they may act in ways that undermine democratic norms or the public good. Of course, there are many, many reasons why this might happen. I've talked about some of them. You've heard about them, you know about them. You see them in your life. We all fall under the sway of some of these qualities ourselves. We might feel a particular identity and a particular loyalty to a group, and these leaders might demand loyalty to the team. We might have shared grievances or common resentments, and leaders might be able to tap into this sense of anger and frustration and validate those feelings. There might be very narrow, specific, and deeply held issues that the leader says they're going to prioritize. There might be a bias or distrust of the other options. Perhaps this potential leader is particularly charismatic and finds ways to connect to others' emotions. Or perhaps this person has found ways to silo information and tap into systems of distribution of information, utilizing systems of communication like algorithms on social media. But probably the most common reason why bad leaders gain power is a combination of cynicism and apathy. There's the idea that all politicians are flawed or untrustworthy, as all humans are flawed. And so what's the point? Why engage at all? And after thinking about these concepts of power and control and how it's delegated or wielded, I do want to turn inward as we wind down this session to a profoundly personal experience, a different type of control, or rather, the lack of control. Today, depression feels like the loss of autonomy. We've been discussing directing others, leading organizations, being in charge. Depression feels like the opposite, a severe internal disconnect from the ability to direct myself. It's not about external limitations, though those can exacerbate it. It's an internal state where the link between my conscious will and my capacity to act, think, or feel seem broken. And of course, the common thing here with depression is that it goes far beyond just feeling sad. It's that pervasive sense of being powerless within my own body, within my own state of being. And simple acts of initiation, getting out of bed, deciding what to eat, starting a basic task, they require seemingly insurmountable effort. It feels as if my own body and mind are heavy, resistant, or operating on a separate, stagnant will that overrides my own desires. The sense of having or feeling that there are choices disappears. I feel low energy, I feel a flatness, I feel negative, and simply saying like snap out of it or make a different choice are just things that don't seem to work. My thoughts feel clouded, I feel trapped in repetitive negative patterns, and I feel unable to direct my attention or think in a meaningful or forward-moving way. Because I'm not sleeping well, my energy feels depleted, regardless of the quality of rest anyways. Autonomy is rooted in the capacity for self-direction, the ability to set goals, to make plans, and to take steps towards them based on personal values and intentions. And depression profoundly erodes this capacity. The internal resources necessary for self-direction, motivation, drive, focus, emotional resilience are diminished. And this results in a deep sense of helplessness and a significant reduction in self-efficacy. I feel less capable of influencing my own internal state or engaging effectively with the world. The gap between the person I know I am or that I want to be and the person who is here, inert, is vast, and it's painful. This internal struggle for control, for the sense of being in control of my own life, is a central and often invisible battle fought by those experiencing depression. It's a painful feeling of lost autonomy. And I know that we all experience these things differently, but that sense of powerlessness often feels exacerbated as I read the news. not just by the politics, because ultimately people move on, systems move on. Everything has a life cycle. But as I understand and witness the strife, right? The struggle of so many people, and I feel the inability to do anything about it, it feels like it's very easy to sink even deeper. Just remember that we make change one step at a time. Every step means something. This is my experience. I can't speak for you, but I hope that this conversation helps you to feel a little less alone. Thank you for joining me today and putting in both the physical effort and giving me your time and engaging with these topics. Please remember to be mindful of the power dynamics around you, to consider where you place your trust, and crucially, to extend compassion and care to yourselves and to others, especially as we all are facing our own battles. Keep moving forward. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, you can send an email to finlos@finloslives.com. You can contact me on social media. You can hear this and all of my episodes at finloslives.com. I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. And I look forward to our next conversation.